Welcome to the XY Advisor podcast, where it's our goal to help you become the best financial advisor possible and drive the positive evolution of financial advice.
Hey guys, Ben Nash from the XY Advisor crew, and I'm super pumped to be introducing this brand new series we're about to kick off all around the 3 Ps of plan, produce, profit. Now, the XY team spent a lot of time thinking about what makes a great financial advice offering, a great financial advice business. And what we distilled it down to was that there are 3 key elements that you need to get right to have any level of success in your financial planning business. The first is about planning and how to plan an epic service proposition that's engaging for the people that you want to work with and compelling to drive real results within your business. The second is about producing, and that's about being efficient in your business, streamlining things, maximizing the benefits of technology to run a scalable and profitable advice service. And then the third is profit, which is all about getting your message out to a bigger market. How do you attract more people into this awesome offer that you're running efficiently and scalably? So I'm taking over the next 15 episodes. We're going to have 15 advisors, going to be 100% advisors. I've had a bunch of fun with the recordings that I've done so far, the interviews, and I've got a few more great ones to come. So I hope you enjoy this series.
This episode is proudly sponsored by FE Analytics. Now, a number of XY advisors have already discovered this one-stop, easy-to-use tool that helps with investment research, analysis, portfolio construction, ongoing monitoring, and client reporting. Find out how FE Analytics can help you improve your business process, manage your existing client base, and win new business by contacting Bruce Jenner via bruce.jenner, Jenner, at financialexpress.net, or visit financialexpress.net for more information.
All right. Names. Nagle, Nagali.
Mr. Nash.
Mr. Nagle. Mate, thank
Mr.
you.
Nagle or Sir will be fine.
Sir, my lord, is that all? My lord, as they would Game of Thrones fire. But mate, thank you for joining us. Casual Friday today.
Casual Friday today.
On a Thursday for myself as well. Mate, we're talking here all in this Plan, Produce, Profit series on how to, plan a compelling service proposition, produce, which is what we're going to talk about today, growing scalably, and then profit, which is get your message to the masses, which we're going to jump into in a few weeks. But I know that Treysta, you guys got a pretty well-oiled machine there, so keen to pick your brain on a few things around efficiencies and how you sort of squeezing the most juice out of what you've got there, which is, important when there's a limit on how much juice you've got to squeeze, right?
Absolutely. Really, really important, my friend. Got to get the best out of your juice.
That's it. Hey, so quick one. So for anyone that doesn't know you, which wouldn't probably be too many, but so Treysta is the business?
Yeah, Treysta's a business. It's our 30th anniversary this year. So business started back in 1989.
Holy shit.
We've seen, or the business has certainly seen a few iterations of the industry. That's a fact. And I think the business itself is reflective of that. In fact, it's probably quite nice that the business has evolved. It looks nothing like it did 30 years ago. It probably looks nothing like it did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I've been with the business for 12 years of that 30. So not quite 50%, but pretty close.
Pretty good. Long service.
As have some of the team's pretty stable as well. So there's a few that have been in that sort of 10 to 12 year side of things as well. So I think that stability is kind of important, and maybe goes a little bit towards efficiency as well.
Yeah.
Like a lot of other businesses, I suppose I'm pretty pleased that we dealt with some of the sort of things that were going on in the Royal Commission. Obviously that, you needed to be blind Freddy not to notice some of the things that were going to be coming up. So we'd sort of pre-planned for some of it. So I think the business is in reasonable shape to sort of take the next set of challenges on.
For sure. And so you guys have got how many advisors in Treysta? So there are 2 parts to the business, which is one, there's a funds management arm. You guys are pretty closely linked with the implemented portfolios, mob, MDAs and IMAs and all that sort of jazz. But so on the advisor side, how many advisors?
Yes, on the we actually reshaped our team a little bit recently.
Lots to
So I think it was quite interesting. So we were at 3 advisors, and the support team as a ratio was liked, by industry benchmarks.
Yeah.
So we sort of probably touch a little bit more on business analysis, but we spent some time looking at, where we thought we had some funnels and blockages and those sorts of things, and we decided to essentially reduce our advisor numbers by 1 and actually re-resource the support mechanism. So we are, I suppose, 1 down on the front line, but actually we've increased the backup troops.
Right.
And we're just sort of working through that at the moment and doing some analysis around that to see what that's looking like.
Yeah.
But
what are you doing to control the ginger to non-ginger ratio in the business?
Not very much at the moment. I think we got that one about right, so not too many concerns around that.
Right.
So yes, actually, I think stressing a business actually reveals its weaknesses pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And that's not always a bad way to sort of think about how you recruit, because often we think we know what we need, or we go to the obvious. But sometimes just allowing the business to stress a little bit and find out where the weak points are is a really good way to sort of say, right, actually, that's a bit where we need to up our resources.
And that will create scale as well, right? Like the people talking on having a good chat with Brett Evans the other day and talking about, growth is not necessarily going to add to the bottom line. It's all just for show, but it's that scalable piece, making sure that the difference in resources is driving a difference to the bottom line as well.
Totally, absolutely, because it's that whole your profit and your margins are where you need to be focused, and sometimes one good client can replace 10 not so good clients. And again, that's a resourcing difference, right? It takes more than, so, you can increase client numbers via advisor numbers, but that doesn't always add up to an improvement in the bottom line.
Definitely. And so in your business, how many advised clients do you guys have?
So we're about 450.
Okay. And your client base, what's a typical client look like?
Yeah, so a typical client are usually sort of pre or post-retiree. So that's sort of, I guess, at the moment the business probably looks like that sort of 60 onwards age group, with some coming through sort of, 50s, but we're moving that demographic. We're sliding that demographic to the left. So, the 40-something is very important to our business now. And I think our core service offering is somewhat reflective of that. But that doesn't mean that we don't remain pretty niche and pretty specialist around that pre and post retiree space.
For sure. And what is the unique service offer, the core service offer?
So I think with the core client base as it stands, that sort of pre and post retiree, really I would probably go back and say it's a product of that managed discretionary account service provided by Implemented, and the way that runs and the way that allows us to interact with our clients in that space that tend to, so we're talking about sort of investor funds under advice in an ideal world for us, sort of that 750 to 5 million number. Mm-hmm. The investment serves that core really, really well. And that enables us to drive a lot of scale into the business. It also, to some extent, provides us with the luxury to invest a little bit in the next generation and the next iteration of the business, which will be that sort of, what does the service offering need to look like for 40 and 50-somethings? And creating the space to evolve that is critical for the survival of the business over the long term. And also it allows us to make sure that the business is modernising in terms of its advice model relative to the regulatory environment.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think it's obviously we, the broad that you've got your core, but then the broader your space, you've got more ability to help more people. But yeah, as you say, that I think that it's funny that the things that work for one age group, and we find this, that they tend to work for a lot of other ones. I know that you guys do a lot of stuff. You're not financial advisors, you're financial life managers, and covering all those bases, the coaching, the psychology. Clearly, you got a tight ship on the investment side of things as well. But they're the same sorts of challenges, slightly different messaging, slightly different approach to the conversations. But ultimately, you don't end up, if you've got a great offer for one group, it's not going to be a million miles away from another group as well.
Yeah, look, I think ultimately it all comes really back down to there's a couple of areas. I suppose we've spent an inordinate amount of time recently around the whole process for knowing your client and developing ever better tools to make sure that you're really getting to the core of what the clients are, what's important to them. What are the areas? We know that there have been examples of through social media, elections have been potentially manipulated by pinging people about the things that really excite them or frustrate them, and to some extent our business needs to sort of be a microcosm of that. We've got to find out the areas that really concern our clients, and then we've got to kind of build some value and a service around some of those things. So in the absence of a brilliant process, how are you going to tease that out?
Absolutely.
And then, like, historically, we sit there with this sort of fact find, which you probably, you could do a pilot sample of, probably 50 fact finds across the industry, and then 49 will be rubbish.
Yeah.
So, it's going back, and then also sort of finding a way to deliver the fact find to a client in a better way as well. So, what technology can you deploy which makes going through that process more acceptable and to some extent more stimulating and engaging for a client, right? So they're kind of going, wow, this is cool. They're enjoying the process. It doesn't create any barriers into your business. In fact, it's a really useful part of that onboarding process where clients are going, actually, this is good. This is interesting. I can see this is about me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you sometimes, I know that I've tested the waters working with a couple of other potential referral, people that can help. We're always looking for good people to help our clients in areas of accounting and mortgage broking, that sort of stuff. And, a couple of times I've had it where they'll send some a PDF form out now, and it's just like, what the fuck are you doing?
It's like
you one, half of this information we have, and two, why on earth would you print this out and fill it in and sign it? It's like, oh my god, no. So
it's pretty extraordinary because we spend a lot of time again as a team sort of trying to put ourselves in the shoes of the consumer as opposed to members of the team within the business. And sort of every time we try and create either a process that we're putting our clients through, it's like, actually, if this was us, how would we feel about this? Would we be kind of, and you presented with a type of forms that you've just spoken about, you look at it and you just go, really? I don't want to do that. So, it's not the greatest start to a business relationship when you kind of go, oh, geez, really?
Yeah.
Exactly. Make it easy for me. How can you make this easy? It needs to be compliant, but how can you make it easy? Or how can you make it more engaging? How can it feel that what I'm doing is actually going to get a better result for me?
Yeah, and reduce the friction, of course, as well, right?
Yeah, friction, massive. Yeah, absolutely. But people kind of are probably a bit more accepting of friction if they can understand that the end result is definitely going to benefit them.
Yes.
Sometimes in terms of the things that you're asking people, I kind of go, I kind of understand why I'm being asked this. I can see that this is going to get me a better outcome.
Mm. Yeah, it's. I think that the user experience, and that's part of this. This efficiency piece is a big one. Where we're all compared against the things that everything's amplified now. Where if you can't get someone set up with something in 7 thumb strokes or less, then it's difficult. So I think it's something that thankfully the technology enables, but it needs that, I think, the user experience first approach. So Look, I'm interested. So like a dozen years in the business, pretty significant amount of time. Clearly, you guys have got this pretty tight offer on the investment space. I know you've done a lot of stuff with your processes, CRM, that sort of stuff. But can you give us a bit of an overview on the journey in that dozen years or so of the business, in relation to efficiencies and how you approach things, how you figured out what to focus on? And how to roll from there. Yeah.
I'll try. There's a lot happened in 12 years.
If you can remember.
Yeah, I think I can. The Alzheimer's not quite come on too far as yet. But I suppose the journey that we've had is common for a lot of businesses that have been around over that period of time. Probably less common for some of the newer businesses. So, some of the businesses within the XY community, thankfully, haven't had some of the frustrations of the past, which is quite nice not to have those anchors. The not so good part is that you don't know what can go wrong, so the lessons are harder to learn because you've not seen so much. But certainly, one of the things that we would have, so 12 years ago, you're basically sitting inside of licensees. And that big licensee model is, 12 years ago, we were kind of kicking and screaming against it for all of the reasons that have just been played out in front of the Australian population.
Yeah. Were you guys with AXA or something?
We were, which then fell into sort of Genesis.
Yeah.
So, the great sadness of it all is that, from a delivery perspective, there were plenty of advisors around at that time that were sort of fighting against some of the practices that ultimately were revealed as still endemic, all that time down the track,
Yeah.
And I think that's a great sadness because, frankly, it could have been fixed much, much sooner with much less distress. And, there's a lot of difficulties going on in the industry at the moment. And, there's a lot of advisors really doing it tough. There's a lot of people leaving the industry. And, the advice community to some extent has to take a level of ownership for that. So there were not enough advisors at the time fighting against the licensees to get things changed. There were too many people taking checks, too many people that were compliant.
The checks were too big.
The checks were too big. But where did it actually, now you kind of, you would question the value of that. It was a big number at the time, but, what does that do relative to what a modernised business might be worth now? So it's kind of interesting.
Yes.
So the frustrations of a licensee, that environment which was driven by sales, driven by in-house product, driven by compliance.
Yeah.
None of those three features were anything to do with the client. All the while working within a supposed fiduciary environment, which is quite interesting. So it's kind of no surprise that the industry sort of landed up where it did. So, and with all that, the fact that the licensees weren't compliant, that they were compliance and sales centric, they weren't client centric, meant that the tech stack often imposed on businesses within those licensees was about compliance, about protecting the license. Lowest common denominator. True. Business model, right? It means that even if you're a really great advisor, you are working to the rules of the worst advisor within a licensee. Yeah. Incredibly restrictive for somebody that's trying to think forward and develop and evolve when he's working in a rules-based environment based on an advisor that's really probably has no business being in the industry in the first place.
Yeah, I've been chatting to our compliance consultant over the last couple of weeks actually. We're just working on refining our fee disclosure statements and ongoing service agreements for clients, and it's actually ridiculous that we run this. We've got highly engaged clients, fixed fee only business. Our advice fees are like $5,000. So when you've got someone paying you $5,000, especially a young person's paying you that out of their bank account, they're making sure that they're extracting that money, that value, or they're going to fight you.
Absolutely,
so, I completely get that opt-in is important, and and all of the disclosure statements are important for that transparency.
Yeah.
But what I ended up doing is saying, because we do a 6 weekly phone call with all clients, but because I could, so with my service agreement, I put a regular meeting, and then they're like, well, what's regular? But then I can't put 6 weekly, because then if I don't do it every 6 weeks, which sometimes, because the client's traveling for 2 months, so I can't do it.
Yeah, totally.
So then I ended up just taking it out, and then now I say, okay, for $5,000, I'm going to give you an annual review, but actually what I'm going to give you is a 6 weekly phone call, which is at that lowest common denominator, which seems absurd.
There you are.
And what sort of client experience is that when they get a thing and say, it's $5,000, you get an annual review?
Yeah. Mate, the world is upside down, and I absolutely echo your frustration. The problem is, of course, that regulation is a laggard.
Yeah.
It has to be, by definition. It's a laggard. It's fixing things up often, right? So, and the great shame is that still the advisors and businesses like yours, and the work that we're trying to do within Treysta, this new stuff, really isn't necessarily for the client's benefit, as you've just explained. It's really, again, to go back to stop people doing the wrong thing and ticking the box stuff and lowest common denominator. It's a great shame, but it's what it is. Right? It's what it is, and we have to work with it, and we have to work with our clients to help them understand, not only the regulatory framework, but actually trying to work through some of the problems that you've just described.
Yeah, well, I can have to have this conversation with all the people now and say, hey, this is what it says, this is why it says that.
Yeah, totally.
But sorry, yes, I interrupted. So
no, you're right.
The technology confines of the INSTO model.
So we were being, we had, so there were technology platforms that were delivered by the licensee that were calibrated to protect the licensee, and not really, it wasn't, the software wasn't designed to create client engagement, better client experiences. It wasn't created even to support great service, actually. So we kind of, we're sort of moving on through the 12 years now, but we ultimately freed ourselves of that licensee. And then when we actually went out and got our own license, which is something that I'd always advocated for, because 18 years ago when I arrived into Australia and moved into financial services and financial advice for the first time, I looked at the framework and I could not understand the concept of this licensing regime. So I rather naively, and it's the only reason that we did it, by the way, we rather naively immediately got our own license. And we did that because I had no reference points on anything that which is, it's too hard, it's too expensive, and it's hard to maintain. This was an absolute illusion that was popped out there by probably big licensees, right? So I was really grateful, to be able to sort of take Treysta through that process. That freed us up. So we essentially kicked out a piece of software which probably a lot of the advice community still use. What we wanted to do was to put a piece of software into the business that essentially was client-centric. We wanted that to be the CRM. Essentially, that's the bit that talks to your clients in an ideal world. So we wanted to put that at the centre of our business. We happened to choose Salesforce. And then, I suppose, when we did that, it was quite a radical leap. There really wasn't a lot of Salesforce users in the industry at the time, certainly not for a practice the size of the Treysta business. We had to bolt other bits on because obviously Salesforce couldn't write an SOA and, sort of things like that. But we were prepared to do that because as far as we were concerned, how we produce an SOA doesn't really impact the client. As long as they end up with a good document, it doesn't matter, right? So we didn't need a big clunky piece of software that was there really to produce this document. We wanted to have the client experience at the fore. The problem is with Salesforce is that it's a big beast. You take it out of the box and it's sort of, wow, that's nice. Look at all the things it can do. And then you start to write checks to obviously to make it fit the business. And, and I think that like any other, we've been on a journey with Salesforce. We actually got to a point, I think, where that it really is, it sort of does it runs our business now. And we're now on the next evolution of our Salesforce journey. And we've partnered with a business called Wealth Connect. And I think for the first time in my experience, we seem to have a tech provider that looks to be able to deliver all of the things that we want within the Salesforce ecosystem. And we're just working through that process at the moment. So we've just upgraded to Salesforce FSC and Financial Services Cloud, and we'll now have Wealth Connect build the ecosystem within that environment, which will include SLA production and all those. So for the first time, we're really going to have the entire business run within that Salesforce environment. Pretty exciting stuff. But, like anything else, we're sort of waiting for the for the delivery of it.
Yes.
But it is a very significant component of what we seek to do next.
Right. So what does Wealth Connect? So your Salesforce is running, your processes, tasks, your day-to-day stuff, snapshots, all that jazz already. What does the Wealth Connect give you?
Well, actually, Wealth Connect comes with that infrastructure. So there's workflow in there. There's a whole bunch of, the Salesforce Financial Services Cloud was never truly Australianized. It came out of the US. It's still out of the box. It still looks quite US centric. So, so it's kind of been Australianized. The processes and procedures for an Australian practice are now embedded within that app, so to speak. So it's much more off the shelf solution. And then, and clearly the ability to not necessarily require any sort of third-party providers outside of that to produce other documents is obviously you start to pull your infrastructure back to that single space, which is really it's exciting. Like I said, it's we're working on this stuff. It's work in progress. It's not delivered yet. It's not working yet. So it's but it looks amazing so far.
I find that as CRM, so we've been on this journey Salesforce based as well for I think coming up to 3 years at the end of this year, and it's a forever project. Like I think we follow a business planning and management methodology similar to like the Rockefeller habits or the traction tools or that sort of stuff, where you've got your key priorities for the 12 months, break them down into rocks or 4 month sprints, whatever. And it's just an always rock is like, what's the next step with the CRM? Like, how can we drive a bit more efficiency? How can we make the reporting better for our internal staff? How to make it easier for us to work together as well? So I think that if you want to, obviously we're talking all about efficiency of this series, that's sort of the core. Like I don't see how you can run an efficient operation without having some sort of a consistent focus on doing that as well. And I think that the joy of Salesforce is the beauty and the curse is that you can do everything, but it's sort of future proof. And I know that even a lot of the guys that run some of these advice tools businesses, that they say it's hard for them to do great financial modeling and document production and workflow management and via CRM as well. It's sort of hard that you get the best of breed, that extra 10% that you get from using the best tech in each part of your stack. You end up getting a much, an exponential sort of uptick in your output.
Totally. The other, you mentioned it before, when you're sort of putting your fee-for-service agreements together and being very careful that you're delivering on everything that you promise. How do you create a great document without, potentially over-promising and under-delivering, as you say, not necessarily in an intentional way, but there can be if you under-promise always, you're in safe space. But I think that the technology can help. It has to support the client experience. Because they're getting ever greater technology from banks. Our life is now surrounded with technology that makes things easier, and our industry has probably struggled and hasn't really kept up with that. So what Salesforce has, of course, is the ability to create fantastic client portals. You can create a wonderful two-way mirror into your business from a client perspective. and I'm looking forward. We've not been able to achieve that thus far, and I'm looking forward to us being able to deliver that in the course of the next 12 months. Because, clients have an expectation to be able to see information very quickly and readily, and more importantly, in a format that they select.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really not for us anymore to decide what our clients want to see or what they can or can't see. It's, because one client will really want to see something completely different from another. And you've got to have an ecosystem that supports both.
Sure.
And, that's kind of what we're working really intensely at the moment in trying to determine what that looks like. This isn't something that we're going to be able to do in the next month, the next 2 months, but I certainly think within the next 12 to 24 months, we're going to be seriously advanced in terms of creating almost like a widget-based ecosystem where our clients can select what they see.
So let's take a step back for a second. Think about when you guys went and perhaps the focus has always been there on efficiency, but when you started jumping right into the efficiency side of things, how do you figure out where to start? That's a common thing that I hear from people. How do you prioritize?
Well, we sort of prioritize based on creating scale within the business. So we really, you can see pretty quickly within your business where you run out of space quite quickly. And you've just got to avoid it, because if you do, you know that your capacity is limited and significantly restricted. And I guess the obvious example is if you're trying to run model portfolios without a discretionary mandate, your ability to service 5, 10, 15, 20 clients really well is probably okay, but you start to get 40 to 60 and, the potential for error or treating clients differently. Client A gets a completely different outcome to client B because you spent more time looking at client A's portfolio. Or he asked more questions that you reacted to. None of that made sense. And also you get completely bogged down. So, running portfolios that have flexibility, the ability to customize, a discretionary mandate running across them, which means on a day-to-day basis, the advisor doesn't need to be involved in that. It's being taken care of. The advisor needs to be brilliant at communicating the service, which is really important. But that frees up a lot of time when you are not burning energy researching a whole bunch of different managed funds or stocks or whatever it might be. If you take away that burn of energy, which has very low value to the end client, and you trust yourself as an advisor to move beyond that, then you will create capacity. That was our example. And there'll be other practices that have different examples. They might be desperately trying to run budgeting as an example for their clients right now. Working with a client at that very granular level is labour intensive, even with some technological support. So you have to think to yourself as a business, how many clients can we service without dropping standards? And
I think that's a big one for the team as well, right?
Yeah, massively.
You want to be efficient as an advisor and make it so that you're giving a consistent client experience and you can access the information that you need to deliver the service that you want. But one of the things that I've noticed is you bring more, as your team grows and you bring more people into the business, if the people aren't there from the start, it happens, they don't know every client and they don't know every client in detail because they haven't worked with them since the very start. It's even more important that you have that information readily available, easily accessible. Even things that we had, we got Chloe, she started 3 months ago or 2 months ago or something, just a preferred name. And she's spinning the wheels trying to go, who is Tommy? There's no Tommy. There's no Tommy on the list. And who's Oliver? It's a different name. So,
and I think again, that's obviously technology, and Salesforce is an example of something that obviously can assist with that. But you got to get it cranking. You got to get it calibrated to your business model, whatever that is, and you've got to make some decisions around. And I think it's a relatively straightforward process to understand where you run out of road. And if you think you're going to run out of road, you've got to rethink your strategy, or you have to constrain your business to be what it is.
Yeah.
So if you're comfortable servicing 100 clients and you know you can do it beautifully and it generates enough revenue for you, that's cool. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
But if your ambition is beyond that, then you have to think about how you're going to scale that business up.
Yeah.
And I think we met and I think there are ways of doing this, right? We met a really interesting lady when we were last over in San Francisco, and she was really a money coach. That's all she put herself up as a money coach, and she was really about spending intensive amounts of time with people around budgeting, cash flow, the really granular stuff.
Yeah.
But she would work with them for a period of probably 3 to 6 months. Okay, and then she'd be gone out of their lives because the work was done. It was, that whole, if you want to feed a man, teach him to fish. Just don't pop down to fish and chip shops.
Yeah.
Last for half an hour, right, and then you're done.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like that. So she kind of goes in, gives the clients the tools, and I just sort of thought to myself, that's a really interesting way for a business to think about scale. So they could. They can pull in somebody like that into their business to work with their clients intensively for 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And then she kind of lets them go. And you've now got this beautifully trained client around budgeting and cash flow and financial behaviour. And you carry on doing your work. And you've not tried to do that bit yourself.
Yeah.
Because actually that's really difficult. That's really tough to scale. So you've really got to think through your bottlenecks. And
break out the bottleneck rules. Have you? Yeah,
totally. Yeah.
It's that approach that I can't recall it off the top of the head, but where it's like to identify the issues that are the issues and whether it's a capacity thing or a service thing, and then refining and tweaking. It's a very effective process in identifying stuff, and you can create because we don't have the back-end capacity, you put your own bottlenecks in, and that's an okay to do sometimes as well, as long as you know where it is. Right?
Yeah, and that's right. And like I said, scale is something that's important to businesses that seek to grow to a particular size. But there are businesses that remain small and, they do very well and they satisfy the requirements of the business owner, and that's great. There's totally nothing wrong with that. So I think that one of the first things you got to do is kind of understand what do you want? What are you in business for? What's the balance that you're trying to achieve with life? And if you can do a brilliant job for a particular business model, number of clients, revenue, that's fine. Then go for gold.
Then scale for your time. You can spend more time at the beach.
Then you start to scale for your time. Bang on.
With the same amount of clients.
Bang on. Then you start to scale for your time. Absolutely. Yeah. And all you've got then really is this sort of renewal process to make sure that you remain current with what you're doing and that your advice models are modernised and those sorts of things. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But for those with bigger ambitions or for those with more mature, larger businesses like the Treysta business, we have to think about scale. Our business is built for sort of 30 years in, the business is built for generational survival. It's built for, having members of the team that can evolve into business owners or part business owners themselves down the track. It's a different model to sort of a 1 or 2 man band that might be more comfortable with a smaller ambition. So for us, it's important because we need to, and the next phase of that for us at the moment, and something that I would urge everybody to do is to analyse their business. Really spend some time on business analytics. And we've spent some time, sort of having a look at the partitions within our business, at fee rates, time spent on particular clients, those sorts of things. Work out what area of your business is generating the best revenue relative to the time that you're spending. Work out the parts of your business that are generating great client outcomes where you're getting lots of stickability and compliments around what you're doing. Work out and one of the great things for some businesses that are having to let grandfathered revenue go, that's an opportunity.
Yeah.
You're going to have a bit of space freed up by, maybe, one might argue that there was not a lot of servicing going on to those clients in some businesses. But it's, that's gone. So you can sit there and you can be frustrated about that, or you can say, right, what are we going to do? How are we going to replace that?
Yeah.
Some businesses might be running around trying to sign those clients up for sort of engaged agreements going forward. Others might take a view that, switch it off and move on. So again, that's up to the individual business owners to sort of think through. But one way to, I think you've really got to analyse what your business is great at and where the opportunities lie going forward before you decide, particularly on strategy.
Yeah, and for my personal view, one, I'm anti-grandfathering, but mainly because of I see the predominance of no service issues.
Totally.
In that, although
totally agree with you.
People are doing it right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for me, I've always found that it's easier to just go and get a new client instead of trying to convince an existing client to change their mindset. I had the same thing with the previous business that I was in, where when I started there, I had very limited idea how to really add value to younger people. So we were doing a pretty basic model where it was like super insurance, charge a percent, and off you go. And it wasn't that they weren't highly engaged people. And then I spent all this time creating a model, starting on this journey the one that I'm on today, and came up with a service offering that I thought was quite cool. And then I'm going, hey guys, guess what? I figured out how to do this thing. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Here you go. What do you think? And they're like, oh, nah. I can stick with that. Or they would change, and then they would opt out because it wasn't what they wanted, the thing that they bought in the first place, and that's the thing as well. So I think it's an interesting one. So tell me, when you're looking at the analytics and seeing where's profitable, because I think that's a really, really important part of efficiency that a lot of people overlook. It's easy to look and go, oh, well, let's automate this document and let's do this thing, build a tech stack and do this other thing and use it, Zap, and connect some stuff and, happy days, I'm efficient. But looking and going, well, where's the profitable segment of my business? Where's the right place for me to be spending my marketing, attention, time, money, potentially, whatever, is a big part of it. So how is that enabled by the CRM, or how did you actually tackle that analysis?
Well, to be honest, it could and should at some point, and going forward, part of the rebuild inside of Salesforce is to strengthen the business analytics. Right now, spreadsheets.
Yeah,
spend some time.
Except it's inefficient.
Like I hate it. It's inefficient. I hate it, and it's not immediately reportable and it's not immediately renewable. But for us, it was sort of a once-off project that we were looking at, so it's okay. Yeah. And we absolutely recognise that we need to strengthen our ongoing business analytics within Salesforce. Yeah. But we'll build it around the model, which is essentially, where's the, what are we really great at? Where are we really... where are we doing well in terms of satisfying client objectives, meeting their needs and all those sorts of things? What do our margins look like in that space? And then how are we allocating the business resources to serving that bit? Yeah. And what you often find, it's classic, it's 80-20 rule, is often the case. And most businesses that do the analytics, they'll come across it. And then, far often it's kind of go, oh, wow, 80-20, that's what people talk about. It's happening to us as well. And it's like you kind of move on. It's doing something about it. And it's kind of recalibrating everything within the business to sort of say, well, actually, these guys are, there's some profit over here, there's less profit over here, but geez, that's because we're taking way too much time over here. We need to move some resources from that part and move them across here. Yeah. And of course, what you're doing then, you're spending most of your time with the clients that are more profitable and more fitting to the business.
Absolutely.
And I think that we often in business, we land up, not being able to see the wood from the trees, and suddenly you're servicing, all of the clients to the best of your ability, and you forget actually that you need to dive in and make sure that the clients are suited to the business, suited to the future of the business, and making sure that, when you do onboard clients, that they absolutely fit your model.
Absolutely.
And having the confidence in your strategy to tell clients that don't fit your model to either go to a different practice or, you might sort of point them in a different...
Send them to Adrian Paddy.
We could. That's right. So that's probably a good place to...
Send them to Zach.
I think Paddy would be the perfect place to start.
Oh, gold. Mate, so tell me, where do you reckon people go wrong when it comes to efficiency?
Look, I think that often it's a case of commercial pressure resulting in bad decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of really easy, isn't it, for businesses to sort of say, right, we're going to have clients that generate X dollars a year, and if we get 20 of them, our business is going to be fantastic. And of course, the on a spreadsheet looks wonderful, and then sort of 6 months down the line, you're paying your WeWork rent or whatever it might be, and it's like, geez, I thought we'd have 20 of those clients by now. We've only got 5, and then you have to either invest for longer to carry on your strategic pathway. You have to make sure that your strategy is right and be confident in it, or you start diving on your sword and saying, oh, geez, I better take a client that is not quite like the one that I want.
Yeah.
There's some revenue there, so that's helpful, and it'll help us pay the bills. And I think that, often commercial reality gets in the way of good strategy.
So you're saying that the thing is stick to your model, because that then allows you to be more efficient because it's your model.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like it. Brett Evans came up with an interesting one when we were chatting as well, which is all around making sure that you've got your foundations and your processes correct. But I think that's it's definitely something. I know that for me, in doing that consistent day in, day out, do the same. We don't do insurance only advice. We don't do super only advice. We don't do cash flow only advice. We do our advice, and that's it. And that's it. You want to buy it? Great. I've got 4 processes in my business that I use, which is my prospect process, my onboarding process, my ongoing client process, and my annual review process. That's it. That's my whole business there. And because I'm not doing, I've got a couple of clients with self-managed super fund, but because I'm not doing, a self-managed super fund one day and a super complicated other thing another day, it allows me to just go, let's. And I suppose it actually talks to Freddie's point as well, that allows you to that constant focus, improvement, refinement, efficiency, and not getting too distracted as well. So
it's complexity and distraction that will get you every time, that's again one of the positives of sort of mature businesses losing potentially sort of grandfathered revenue or grandfathered clients. One of the advantages of that is that you will reduce complexity within the business, without a doubt.
And phone calls in and stuff as well.
Yeah, totally. So there's often business owners are reluctant to let revenue go, and you need to sometimes someone forces that issue, and it's like, oh, okay,
yeah.
Totally, and then you have the ability to regenerate, and I think that there's businesses that do regenerate will come out of it much more strongly. There'll be the future of the industry will be brighter because of it, even though right now it seems pretty painful, and it feels like it has. The industry's been under attack. Has it probably gone too far? Well, maybe. Who knows? One of the side effects is, cost to serve obviously has increased, which means that people fall out of advice, which is somewhat of a shame. The banks will probably come back into that space at some point, direct to consumer offerings, AMP. We're talking about this yesterday, right? So I think that
stuff,
totally right.
Because the unfortunate thing, as I see it, is that we're charging more. It's okay for me, and I've had this criticism from a few people before that I go, we're charging $5,000. Okay, I'm working with people that can pay it. No worries. For me, it's no problem. But it means that there are people that you just have to cut them out of a model like that because it can't be sustained. So I think but that's where I think the technology definitely can fill the gap.
I mean, one of the difficulties though, Ben, will be you're going to be competing with I don't know how much your AMP raising. 650.
300. I thought it was 300, but
I can't remember, but whatever, big number, right?
Yes.
So that a lot of that money, as they've said, is going to go back into technology and creating direct to consumer offerings. So if you're standalone practice, you've got to sort of think about, I'm not saying you can't compete with that, you've got to think about how you're going to do it, right? So,
although that being said, A&P did spend $100 million implementing Salesforce in their business, and I've heard that it's pretty limited in terms of what it can actually do still. So maybe that $300 million spend still holds out some hope for us.
Yeah, well, maybe. Money doesn't always solve the problem. There's plenty of examples where it hasn't. But, I guess what I'm saying is, obviously the big financial institutions got a lot of financial muscle in terms of building technology, which isn't cheap. But, one of the great vibrancies within the XY community is the ability of people to share information. They're using free plugins and they're getting stuff to work, and that's awesome. So you just got to find out, if you're going to compete at that sort of more at the sort of budget advice level, you got to be aware that you're up against the industry funds and you're up against the big institutions, and you've got to find your niche, and you've got to find a way to have a great delivery mechanism around that. Not impossible, and there'll be people that make a lot of money doing it. So, but I think generally there will be whilst we're losing huge numbers of advisors within the industry at the moment, we'll probably land up with more competition.
Yeah, and I think it has to lean to people to trust more in advice when there's not they're paying a 3% admin fee for their shitty old super fund, and they're wondering why it's never going up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
when that sort of stuff goes and everything's 100%, then people go, "Oh, actually, super's pretty good."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, totally. It's like, wow, my balance is growing. What happened?
Mate, that's great. So tell me, if you guys were to go back to the drawing board and start from scratch, what would you have done differently from in relation to efficiency going?
It's a really difficult question to answer. I guess what I probably I think that it goes back to the point that I raised before, which is, if you've got a strategy and you've got a model that you believe in, I think you have to really have the confidence to go through and discharge on that. And if it's not working, change your strategy. But whatever it is, keep to your strategy.
Yeah.
Don't have a strategy and then kind of go, we'll kind of do that on the side a little bit. Yeah. And we'll keep this strategy, but if we'll sort of fill in the gaps with this other stuff. And I think that probably, if I sort of rewound 5 years, I'd probably say, right, I'm going to be a bit more purist around the approach. Because where we've remained, I think where we've tried to do that, we've had our greatest successes. So, I would say, you have a purist business model, and it's been nice that you've created that from the beginning pretty much. Yeah. And you've run with it and you've stuck with it, and it's delivering results. And I think that, the lesson, more difficult for a business like Treysta that's 30 years old, and, it's kind of been, it's had its different iterations. But, but I think, certainly if you can look forward to having a model that and a strategy that you stick to, and you're really confident, that you're great at what you do, you service clients, you deliver value for money, all that stuff. You've got to be in good shape, right? Yeah. And I think that I would say if there's anything I would have changed, it would probably been, sort of running along with a more purist version of what we were doing, because where we remained true to ourselves, we definitely got the best results.
Awesome. Love it. Focus is always good.
Totally.
Cool, mate. Well, look, I know we could talk about this all day, but a few quick ones for you before we go. Biggest oops moment or stuff up on the journey?
Biggest oops moment was probably when we threw a piece of software out to make room for Salesforce, and then started to think about how we were going to produce SOAs.
That's sort of an important thing. Yeah.
Well, look, it was kind of, we sort of, we kind of got away with it. We're not a high volume business. We don't particularly want to be, but it was kind of, but actually it was quite cathartic, because you have to go back and sort of go, okay, blank sheet of paper, write really good documents.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I think it was probably early on in the piece. The guy that I originally started to work with, which was about when you create a document, or it doesn't matter, a modernised version of that might be a slide deck, whatever. Just make it really fantastic for a client to read. Mm-hmm. Get your numbers consistent. Don't have stuff jumping around. Where did that number come from?
Yeah.
Then you're there scratching your head. I'm not really sure. So just great, consistent documents. That's stayed with me.
Yeah, love it. Good, and also good for the user experience to what we were talking about before.
Totally.
Cool. Top tip for teams.
Top tip for teams.
Team, how, working with the team, managing the team.
Look, I think creating a collective sense and of where you're going and what you're trying to achieve. Making sure that everybody's on the journey, everybody understands why you're on the journey, and everybody believes in the journey. I think that's awesome. If you can all, we're actually, at the moment, we're kind of doing some work around that, actually, just to try and make sure that everybody knows what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah.
And just basically getting people excited about what we're trying to achieve. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's super important. That's actually, we're doing a similar thing at the moment as well. And it's easy that you've got parts of the business where you're sort of toiling away, but sometimes it's like the forest for the trees sort of thing. And that's
totally
super powerful when when they have that alignment.
Yeah, I'm in production, but hey, I know why these things are being done this way. I know why Mark's pedantic about the numbers not jumping in from everywhere. I understand that this delivers better client results. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And last one, what's your spirit animal?
Oh, spirit animal. Tortoise.
Tortoise.
Just to random it up a bit.
Very good. I expected something there.
Yeah, there you go.
Well,
I'll leave you to do the psychological unraveling of that.
Mate, thank you very much.
Mate, it's been a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, good stuff. Good on you, mate. Well done.